Beltane is the fire festival of the Celts with connections to fertility, sensuality, creativity, and abundance. So, also at this time, the veils between the worlds thin slightly, which means you may have chance encounters with the fae folk or other nature spirits. So, tonight we'll be talking about different ways to celebrate Beltane and to usher in the magic of this very special season. So, merry meet and welcome to those who are joining us. So, say hi in the chat if you're with us live. And as always, we will have a Q&A at the end where you can leave questions and comments, and I will answer all those questions. And we're going to dive in. We've got a lot to talk about. So, Mary Mead, I see Sue is here in the chat. So just do me a favor, if somebody could just let me know if the microphone is working. It looked okay in test, but I'm just still paranoid about it. So let me know. So we're going to dive in and we'll be talking about Beltane, give you some background on Beltane, and then also sharing different ways that you can celebrate this special time of the year. And of course, one thing that I want to mention as before we begin is something about the Sabbats, and this goes for all Sabbats, not just Beltane, is that the Sabbats don't necessarily fall on just one day. So sometimes we think that it's this day, just like regular day, like Christmas or Easter or something like that. And thanks for letting me know the mic is working, Sue. So we think of it as just this one day that comes and goes, and that's not really the case with Sabbath energy. Sabbath energy, the day that we traditionally celebrate the Sabbath, is the start of a seasonal energy that then ushers in a good 5 or so weeks of energy before we transition into the next Sabbath. So why I want to open up by saying that is every year people come to me and they're kind of upset because they feel like they've missed the Sabbath because it's a couple days later and they didn't get to do anything. And the reality is you have plenty of time. And so I'm going to be sharing a lot of ways to celebrate Beltane. So we're not meant to cram all of this necessarily into one day or into one ritual. You have 5 weeks where you could spread out some of these activities, any of the ones that you find interesting. Okay, so let us dive in, and we are going to begin by talking about just some basics of Beltane. So, for those of you who've been on this path for a while, this is going to be a review for you, and those of you who are newer, this might be your first time celebrating Beltane or even learning about it. So, Beltane is a Celtic fire festival. It is considered a cross quarter day. So, I just wanted to spend a moment talking about what that means to be a cross quarter day. So, other cross quarter days in the Wheel of the Year are Imbolc, Lughnasadh, and Samhain. Now, these are the midpoints between the transition points of the seasons. So, that means that they are the midpoints between the solstices and the equinoxes. Now, in this case, with Beltane, it is the midpoint between Ostara and between Litha, between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. So, one thing that's kind of interesting to think about is the merging of and blending of the energies between those two seasons. So, between spring, which is connected to the air element more, and to the east, right? If we're thinking about even the witch's wheel of the witch's circle, kind of laid upon the wheel of the year. And we would probably imagine that at air at east would be where Ostara is, right? The start of the solar year. And then as we move, as the wheel of the year turns and we move in the witch's circle, we eventually come to south, to the fire element, and this is where we would imagine Litha to be. And so Beltane is in between those two, and it merges the energy of the spring and the energy of the summer, and it merges the energy of air and the energy of fire. So just something to think about. Those are two elements that are in greater proportions at this time of the year. And so one of the things that you can think about is how to use both of those types of energies in your spell work, in your practices that you are currently doing right now at this time of the wheel. And so just saying hi to a few more who have joined us. So, of course, Sue is here, and Amy and Kurt. Hi, Kurt. And Cersei is also here. So, welcome everybody. And as always, whether you are live or you're watching back in replay, drop comments in here. Let us know how you celebrate Beltane, because I'll be sharing a lot of ways that are going to be ideas for people, but people also learn from what is going on in the chat. So there is a note, so I have a note in my notes to talk just briefly about the debate between whether or not the Celts actually celebrated the solstices and equinoxes at all. And so this is where sometimes you'll find a little discrepancy in some of the information you see. So some believed that the Celts actually viewed the cross quarter days as the change of the seasons. So what that would mean is that Beltane would actually be the start of the summer season in the Celtic calendar. So the it's open to debate. I've seen information from both sides. The reality is that it is a fire holiday. It is still has connections to the air element as well because it isn't quite at the kind of the southern part of our witches circle yet. So it's up to you to sort of decide what do you consider the beginning of summer. So sometimes, on the flip side of the wheel of the year, sometimes we'll say that Samhain is the Celtic New Year. So and that in that respect, it's like the beginning of the winter season at Samhain, not necessarily at Yule. So it's kind of up to you what you do in your own practice. So let us continue on. Let's talk about the origin of the word Beltane. So we have a couple of different ideas of where it may have come from. So the first idea is from the sun god Bel or Belanos. So the holiday's name may originate from the name of that god who is often worked with and honored at this time of the wheel. The word Beltane may also refer to the balefires that were built at this time. And the balefires would be built across different parts of the land, and there's different ways that they could be used. So sometimes cattle would be driven between the fires, and it was thought that this was very purifying to the herd. So basically ensuring the abundance of your herd by purifying them with the purifying fires of Beltane. Other things that could be done with the fires is that couples would jump over the fires. And that would ensure that not only the fertility of the overall land, but actually the fertility of the people who are jumping over the fires as well. So when we talk a little bit later, there are ways that you can create bale fires and carefully jump over them. And continues to be a Beltane tradition to this day. But definitely there's evidence that this was a practice that people commonly did. Now, in the story of the Wheel of the Year, the sun god reaches his sexual maturity at Beltane. So he transforms into the green man from the little boy that he was, from kind of Yule at his birth to kind of the boy he becomes at Ostara to now the man he becomes at Beltane. So people believed that the fertility of the land would be ensured as long as the god and the goddess were able to consummate their marriage. Some say at Beltane, some say at Litha, but somewhere in there, the god and the goddess need to consummate their marriage so that they ensure the fertility of the land. Now, this union is called the sacred marriage, or sometimes we will call it the Hieros Gamos, Hierosgamos, also known as the Great Rite. So the people of the past would actually perform this physically in many cases, where perhaps a young couple, a young man to represent the god and a young woman to represent the goddess, would come together and through sexual union would basically consummate the marriage of the god and the goddess. Now, today, most people will perform this symbolically, and it can be done in a variety of different ways. It can be done with a chalice to represent the womb of the goddess, and a athame or a wand to represent the phallus of the god, and then those are merged together in some kind of sacred ceremony to again create this sacred marriage between the deities, between the power of the mother and the power of the father. That then ensures that the rest of the spring and the summer will be abundant and fertile. And if the summer and spring are abundant and fertile, then we'll be sure to have enough going into the winter. So this is basically the reasoning of why this type of practice existed. And then many believe, our ancestors believed, that it was necessary to actually, through sympathetic magic, enact this out, or the wheel of the year would stop turning. and then perhaps the fertility of the land would abate, and there wouldn't be the harvest that they needed. Now, today, we know that the wheel of the year turns regardless of whether we are there or not, but as witches, we feel still that it's our job to kind of protect the wheel, protect the earth, and keep the traditions alive. So, this is why you will see many covens and many solitary practitioners or other groups who will perform the sacred marriage, the great rite, the Hieros Gamos, whatever they choose to call it, on Beltane. Now, our coven this year will be performing the sacred marriage, a symbolic great rite. I'll explain to you at the end what that is, what we're going to be doing, and then let you know how you can join us if you would like. But to me, this is one of the probably quintessential activities that is connected to Beltane. And just an aside for anybody who has read the book The Mist of Avalon, and or has seen the miniseries, which was from the probably late 90s, I can't remember. It had Juliana Margulies in it. But there is a scene where King Arthur has just been crowned as the new king, and Morgaine is his sister. Unbeknownst to him, he doesn't know that at the time, but she's a new, kind of a newly emerging priestess from Avalon, and she has come to represent the goddess, and so they consummate the marriage through sexual union in this like a scene with fires going all around, and then outside there are you see kind of couples going into the shadows to also, consummate the sacred marriage in their own way as well. But if you've never read that book or seen that miniseries is quite good as well. I definitely recommend checking it out. Although it is fiction, there are some scenes like that which really do depict the practices that we believe some of our ancestors probably did. Um, okay, so I already mentioned about the balefires. So let me see, that was next in my notes. Okay. So another way that we can also symbolically recreate that union of the god and the goddess is through the maypole. So here, like the chalice and the athame or the wand, we have also the symbolic representation. So the earth is the womb of the goddess or the body of the goddess, and the maypole is the phallus of the god. And so when those two come together, again, this is a way to ensure fertility. It's sympathetic magic that helps to turn the wheel of the year and encourage in the energies that people want. So, also important to remember that these practices, while they are literally about the fertility of the land, and in some cases the fertility of people and the fertility of the herds and physical fertility like that, the season itself is about fertility of anything. So this is a time when, the things that perhaps you've had on the back burner, the things that you wish you could have a boost of energy, like think about that air energy and that fire energy I talked about. So boosts of those types of energy, you can put those behind projects at this time. So fertility doesn't necessarily have to be uh, physical fertility, and it doesn't just have to be connected to the abundance of the earth either. It can be connected to abundance of any kind in your life. All right, so let us talk about it's always worth it to me to kind of highlight the opposite Sabbath because of this. First of all, there's a connection between opposites. So when we kind of gaze across the wheel of the year, we gaze across it at Samhain, and then of course our friends who are in the southern hemisphere, they are going to be celebrating Samhain as we are celebrating Beltane, right? So it's always worth sort of gazing across the wheel to see what we can learn from those connections. And so, well, a couple of things that we notice that are similar is the thinning of the veils. So at Samhain, that's really where we talk about the thinning of the veils, right? We talk about it becoming easier to connect to our ancestors. We talk about we do dumb suppers where we are honoring those who have crossed over. We might do rituals to help those who crossed over kind of fully cross over and not stay lingering, near the earth. So, but the point is that there's this thinning of the veils, and there is evidence that more life is going out of this world at that time. So all you have to do is look around you and you see death, right? You see transition. You see the leaves falling off the trees. You see flowers and things decaying on the ground. Now, if you look at the other side of the wheel where we presently are, we see newness, right? And the veil is also thin to allow more life to come into this plane. And we see that in the flowers that begin to bud and bloom and more greenery around us. And so when these veils thin, they also afford us the ability to communicate a little better with those things that are on the other side. And so in this case, a lot of times it will be like the fae folk, nature spirits, elementals. Um, it just becomes easier to communicate with other beings when the veils are a bit thinner. So we'll talk more about fairy magic as we get into ways to celebrate Beltane. But I wanted to bring that point up. You know, it's always, to me, always interesting to gaze across the wheel, sort of see what themes connect these two axes, right? And of course, remembering that those of our friends and family who are in the southern hemisphere, they are having that opposite experience of us. All right, so I think that brings us to ways to celebrate Beltane. Let's see. I have one more kind of back basic fact that I wanted to share before we go on. So, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning, Beltane is a cross-quarter day, which means that it falls between a equinox and a Sabbath. So in this case, spring equinox and summer solstice. Sorry, what did I say? Equinox and Sabbath. I meant to say equinox and a solstice. So between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. So here at this cross-quarter day, what we realize is that despite the fact that we will say that Beltane is on May 1st, because the equinoxes and the Sabbats move from year to year, that means that the cross-quarter days also vary year to year. And so in most cases, the actual astrological Beltane, which is the actual midpoint between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, varies about from May 4th to May 7th, but it's never May 1st. So we celebrate the traditional Beltane that you'll see on calendars is May 1st, and you're going to see people actually start to post and start to celebrate tomorrow. If you are watching us live, we're recording this on April 29th. So tomorrow, April 30th, some traditions say that Beltane, the traditional Beltane, starts at sundown on the 30th, and then it goes all the way till sundown on May 1st. And then others will say May 1st is the traditional day to celebrate. So both of those are great. And then it's also important to keep in mind that astrological Beltane then follows several days later. Now, in this year, 2025, astrological Beltane is on May 5th, so Monday, May 5th. So you have plenty of time to celebrate, whether you do it on traditional Beltane, astrological Beltane, or sometime before Litha. This is Beltane season. So just wanted to bring that up. I think it's always important to think about the different ways to really look at time. And so what that also means is that at astrological Beltane, that would be the thinnest of the veils, just like at astrological Samhain, that would be the absolute thinnest time, and that isn't October 31st or November 1st. It's usually several days later. Okay, so what are some ways to celebrate Beltane? So I want to spend the rest of the time talking about different ways to celebrate. And of course, here, share in the chat if you've tried any of these ways, or if you have any other ways that you celebrate that I don't mention. We would love to hear from you as well. Sue said her family constructed a maypole for her mother every year outside their kitchen window, which is so awesome to grow up. Or she said, my father constructed a maypole for my mother every year outside their kitchen window. Like, how awesome to grow up seeing that, right? That is so cool. Our coven, we've only really constructed one or two times because they could be quite a bit of work. But that is so awesome to be able to have that experience and so much fun for those who've never done maypole before. It's really worth your time to find somebody who's doing one, and just kind of Google or if there's any local groups who might be hosting that and try it. When we did it ourselves, we got PVC pipe, and we had a really big PVC pipe, and then we attached the ribbons from the very top of it. So Sonia says they make honey cake. Yeah, so food is also a big way to celebrate Beltane, and honey in particular is one of the main foods of Beltane. And saying hi to a couple others who are here, Andrea and Rebecca and Melinda, Tommy, Mary, meet everybody, and Sonia. So good to see you all. Okay, so let's dive in. And again, like I said, share in the comments if you've tried any of these ideas before or if you have any others to share with us. So the first idea I'm going to mention is divination. Because the veils are so thin at this time, your two most ideal times for divination are Beltane and Samhain, in my opinion, because of the thin veils. Other times of the kind of year where veils are thin, they're thinner around dark moons and new moons, so they're thinner at any transition spaces. And so, in fact, from Beltane to Litha, just like from Samhain to Yule, those entire 6 weeks in between those two Sabbats tend to be the times when the veils are the thinnest. So this is why divination is so good at this time, especially for somebody who has either struggled with divination, maybe struggled in trusting yourself during divination, maybe you're a brand new beginner, or maybe you're experienced and you wanted to try a new type of divination. Now is a very good time to do that because you benefit from that slight thinning of the veils. So it's just basically a little advantage you get. So what I would recommend, many people will go first towards tarot. And oracle cards. It tends to be the first choice for many people because it's very accessible. We are a visual society in many ways, and seeing the imagery helps people. But I also recommend branching out and trying different forms. Pendulum, if you've never tried it before, this could be a really good time to try some pendulum divination. Automatic writing can be used as a form of divination as well, or as a way to communicate with the higher self or even spirits outside of you. Other forms of divination could be runes. That would be another nice thing to do now. Some people like to do tea leaf reading. So if there's a form that you've been wanting to try, now is a good time to do a little research on it and then make that part of your ritual, if you're doing a ritual or some spell work or a practice, or just do divination itself. So that is our first kind of idea for celebrating Beltane. And personally, I have divination be part of every single practice that I do generally, even if it's my simple kind of daily practice. I pull a card. But especially at rituals that I'm leading, or even in my own private rituals, divination is always a part of the ritual. But especially now, if divination is not a part of your regular practice, this would be a good time to add it in. Okay, so next idea is hand fastings. And so this is a really nice time to pledge your love for your partner. And so hand fasting is some people will call it a Wiccan marriage. And it's not necessarily a Wiccan practice. It can be used by any person who considers themselves pagan, witch, or Wiccan, any of those labels. And so the hand fasting can just simply be a ceremony that you do. So you would generally need to have somebody hand fast you. You don't hand fast yourselves, just like if you get married, you have to have someone there officiating it. And then the arms are usually tied together with ribbons, and then vows and pledges are taken in some kind of beautiful ceremony. So I've actually hand fasted a few people from our in-person coven, with thoughts to perhaps do more hand fastings in the future. But they are a very beautiful ceremony for this time of the year. So going back to what I said between Beltane and Litha, this is just like the perfect time of the year to do a hand fasting. And then one thing that I wanted to mention too is, remember, you don't have to do it on Beltane or Litha. It's this entire season of time that you could do it. But the other thing I wanted to mention, I always mention, is just kind of interesting to think about the day of the week that you choose to do a hand fasting on. And so if you're already married or you've already had a hand fasting, Don't worry, this is not saying there's anything wrong with what you did if you did it on a Saturday. But people tend to do these kinds of rituals on Saturdays because it's just that's the day that people are off, and it's just the day that people do it in our culture. But the reality is that Saturn is the planet connected to Saturday, and Saturn is a planet of constricting energy. It's like the taskmaster, the teacher, very necessary and a beloved guide of mine, but not necessarily the energy we want when we're thinking of like the openness and expansionness of union with another person. So, like again, like I said, if you already are hand fasted or married and you did it on a Saturday, don't worry. But if you haven't gotten married or hand fasted and you're planning to, it's just something to think about. Fridays are the days of Venus, Sundays are the day of the sun. So both of those days are actually really much better than a Saturday from an astrological and energetic perspective. So hand fastings. So we'd love to hear who had a hand fasting before and what your experience was, or if you're planning to have one, share in the chat, let us know. And Sonia says she would love to be able to do hand fastings for people eventually. Yeah, it's really it's really a beautiful ceremony to be just to be a part of, but then to be doing it for people too. It's so nice. Peggy says she wants a hand fasting, and that's the other thing too. Is if anybody's already married, you can always have a hand fasting because a hand fasting is just a ceremony to pledge your union to a person. So you can basically rewrite your vows if you had a traditional marriage at some point, maybe even a traditional marriage before you became pagan or realized you were pagan. You can always create a hand fasting ceremony, and you just need a person to, help you to tie the ribbons and help say the vows and everything. Or you can find a priestess or a priest who can officiate it as well. But it is definitely a very appropriate activity and a fun activity for this time of the year. Okay. So Sonia said leaving some of the honey cake for the Fae, of course. Of course, this is a great time of year to be leaving offerings for the Fae, and we'll talk about that for sure. And Andrea said she made a small one for her altar, honey cake, I would assume. Yeah. Okay, all right, so let's get back to the next idea here, which is leaving offerings for the Fae. So Sonia saw right ahead of that. So we are in synchrony here. So leaving offerings for the Fae folk is another, like when I talked about the kind of sacred marriage being a kind of quintessential activity for Beltane, Fae folk offerings, working with the Fae is kind of your other quintessential activity for Mabon. So many offerings can be left for the fairies. So this is a great time to leave your offerings. So personally, I always leave my offerings for the nature spirits, for the fae, whoever wants them. So as long as the offerings are safe to leave outdoors. So last night I was a little late doing my dark moon, new moon ritual, and so I actually did it last night. And I had flowers and some oranges, and so afterwards I took them outdoors and I left them at a tree. So I have a tree in my yard that has a natural fairy door. And so for anybody who doesn't know, a natural fairy door is a kind of opening, a very small opening at the very base of a trunk of a tree. And so my particular tree has this opening, and so they say that these are natural portals where the fae naturally kind of gravitate to. So I have decorated it. I leave them offerings all the time. There are seashells. In fact, I have some seashells that I kind of turned upside down. So they're like little bowls for them. And then I put offerings in there. So I left my flowers and my oranges out. So you can always leave offerings at any time. In fact, I encourage you, especially if you have like edible offerings like that that are safe, or floral flowers, things like that, just leave them outdoors for the fae at any time, or nature spirits at any time. But this is a particularly good time to do it, especially if you don't do it generally. So other offerings besides flowers and fruit. So already in the chat, people were talking about the honey cakes. So honey cakes, anything made out of honey is a very good offering for the fae. Shiny things. They love shiny things. So this is the time of the year when we say in our house, this is fairy season. So a couple of different things are going to happen during fairy season, at least from our perspective, is number one, cats get a little crazy. Now, any animal can, but especially cats. So all of a sudden they see things that you can't really see. My cat Camazotz, my cat Midnight always would get crazy at Beltane, but my cat Camazotz last night, he was going crazy, and he's not a cat who has a lot of energy a lot of the times. He's a little chonky, and so he doesn't move a ton, but he was up on the top of the couch and he was going nuts and like he was seeing things last night. And so I always say at this time of year it's Beltane, so of course he's seeing something, and it could be that he's seeing the fae or some kind of like nature spirits, or we could also be seeing the departed, other cats that have departed that used to live with us. So so that is one thing that I kind of feel happens during fairy season, is cats in particular, but animals like pets can get a little crazy because they're seeing stuff. And then also what I notice is that things tend to go missing, in particular shiny things. So your necklaces, your pretty silver and your jewels, your keys. So this is the time of year where I make sure be very certain where I put the keys, so that they don't become a kind of a target for the fairies, because things will just seem to disappear and then all of a sudden reappear in the same place sometime later. So this is just a good time to watch out for your shiny things. But what you can do is you can leave offerings to the fae of shiny things, and that will help prevent them from kind of taking the things that you don't want. So our maiden in our coven, Beth, she does kind of like workshops on fairy magic with us in the coven. She did one last year, and I'm sure she'll do another one at some point soon. And she talks about getting little tiny jars, so like the little tiniest mason jars, or like a little baby food jar, and then filling it with trinkets, shiny things, glitter, um, old necklaces and things you don't care, jewels that you don't care about anymore, and then placing those in places of your house. It delights the fairies. It's a beautiful offering to them because they love that stuff. But because you've given it to them, then they're a little less likely. This is what she says. They're a little less likely to then take your things that you don't want them to take. But great time to work with the fairies, and especially to leave them some offerings. Okay. And I'm just going to go check it. I'm just checking up the chat here for a second. Kurt said, if I remember correctly, a hand fasting is good for a year. Then you decide if you want to continue being together. I think that might be a tradition that isn't certainly not in our tradition. So when we hand fast for as long as the couples want to remain together. But there could be groups where that's the practice that they do. There's really, when it comes to this kind of stuff, there isn't necessarily always one size fits all for everybody. But that's definitely not in our tradition. Um, Rebecca said you have to be ordained in some manner to hold hand fastings. I mean, if you want to have them be legal, then you would have to be ordained, and there are ways to do that. Like, you don't have to be an ordained minister of a specific church. There are ways to get ordained online. But if you wanted it to also be a legal marriage, then you would have to be ordained. Otherwise, like, I think if you practice and it's typically people who practice for a while, then they start to kind of offer them to others, and eventually they could hold them for more and more people. But yeah, you don't have to be ordained. Um, oh, Andrea said she made a small maypole for her altar. Yeah, that's a nice offering too, or a nice thing to put on your altar. It would also be a neat offering for the fairies too. A little kind of fairy-sized maypole could be a cool thing to set up. Um, let's see. Sue said, my cat Midna was staring at a new spot on the wall this morning. She gets visits from our former cats all the time. Yeah, and perhaps even more so now than before. And Chelsea said the same thing I said. Yes, if you want, you can. Anybody could perform a hand fasting, but if you want it legally binding, you would have to be ordained. Yep. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the next thing. Is let's see. Taking a ritual bath with flowers. So, working with flowers in general is great at this time of the year. So, I'll talk about a little bit later. I'm going to talk about some other ideas of working with flowers. But ritual baths are great. Number one, they're very purifying. Number two, they're great self care. So, this is a good time to kind of pamper yourself in this time of the year. You can get fresh flowers, put them in the bath with you. You could use floral essences, put those in the bath with you. If you don't have a bath like me, sadly, I only have showers here. What you can do is you can take a cheesecloth, get a piece of cheesecloth, and you can put the flowers or herbs or any, and even some oils on the herbs. You can tie it up in the cheesecloth and then you hang it from the shower spout, and then you get, at least you're going to get some kind of that floral fragrance and essence in the shower with you. So that's a way that you can work with them even if you don't have a bath. But great time to, I do believe that any time of the wheel of the year is a good time for self care, but especially now is just kind of pampering yourself and doing good things for yourself. You know, there's that vital energy outside around us, and in some ways, like to me, I always think, like I shared this back at Ostara. I think of Ostara as the beginning of the wheel of the year. So I don't really think of New Year's as January 1st. It literally has no astrological connection to anything. It's just a date. It's a date that we, with the Gregorian calendar, kind of decides this is the beginning of the year. But many cultures actually find springtime to be the beginning of the year. In our case, which is the beginning of the wheel of the year. And so it feels to me like this is a time to just be doing good things for yourself, trying to instill good habits right now when you have vital energy around you that then carry you through into the darker half of the year where your energy starts to go more inward. If we create the good habits now and do the good things for us now and really instill the self care now, we're more likely to continue it through the rest of the year. So, ritual baths is just one way to do something good for yourself, but it can start, like it can create a chain reaction. So, you start taking care of yourself that way, slowing down, taking kind of the ritual baths, and the next thing you know, you're finding space to do more and more good things for yourself. So let's also talk about, so the ritual bath is a good thing to do before a ritual, but let's talk about some ritual ideas. And so these ideas can be used as in a group, or these ideas can also be used solitary, and you can adapt them to like your specific needs. So here are some ideas. So spinning a web. So I really like this idea for ritual because it's an alternative to the maypole. So if you don't construct a maypole or can't construct one, spinning a web can be really fun. And I'm going to tell you how we did it as a group activity, and I'm sure that we could figure out ways to adapt it to like a solitary. But how we did it is everybody had, well, we had basically like really thick ribbon, if I remember correctly. We did it two different ways. So one way is you have really thick ribbon, and then you kind of start it with one person and you have to be in a circle, and then you throw it like the ribbon across or pass it across to someone who's kind of away from you, and then they would then pass it to someone who's like kind of the opposite side of the circle from them, and you just go back and forth as this web gets kind of woven in between you. When we in particular did it, we did it as a way to increase like coven cohesion and like affinity for each other and love for each other and connection to each other. But it can also be used to sort of like catch blessings. And because you're using ribbons, you have that kind of connection to Beltane as well. So it can be a nice alternative to the maypole. Now, another way that you can do it is we made a circle of ribbon first, and everybody kind of held it. And then earlier in the ritual, people had made like they braided their own braid, so they each had three smaller ribbons, and they braided those together with intentions, and then we connected all of those together, and then that was what we passed around until we made the web. So I'm not entirely sure how you could do something like this solitary, but just something that popped in my head was like the cat's cradle, if you've ever seen. I don't even know how to make one, but that just kind of popped into my head. There are ways that you could work with yarn and ribbon and do something kind of solitary. And the idea here is that whatever you are doing, you're choosing some kind of an intention for the season, and then you're weaving that into, as we weave the web, you're weaving that intention in. So a lot of things that you can, a lot of different ways you could adapt that. So another thing you can do is the symbolic great rite. So I mentioned that earlier, and I will talk about it later because I'm going to tell you what we're going to be doing this year in our coven in our online ritual. But during the symbolic great rite, usually there's something that is some kind of a script that might be read out loud and kind of performed, and that's usually what we do. And then we have a chalice to represent the goddess, like I mentioned earlier, and an athame to represent the god. And then symbolically, these two come together, and then the goddess and the god energy is fused together, and that is meant to kind of bring in this intention of fertility around us. So you could find a way to do that too. And so, like, if you don't need to go out and buy the tools. You don't need a chalice. You could also use a cauldron. If you don't have either of those, you can use a bowl. And if you don't have, let's say you don't have an athame or a wand, you can use your finger, or you can use a stick that you got outdoors, or a knife from your kitchen. So there's a lot of ways to adapt this, even if you don't have the tools. You don't need the tools. Now, if you have the tools, use them because it's fun. But if you don't need to go out and buy them for this. But that is a way to enact the symbolic great rite. And then you can also have like some type of an intention, like what is the fertility that you want to bring in personally, or you can have your intention just be for sort of the fertility of the land and abundance of people around you. So other things that you can do, charging coins for fertility and abundance. So we did this one year. This was the year we were working with Lakshmi, and we worked with her like almost the whole year, this one particular year. And then eventually I loved working with her so much. That's how she actually ended up becoming my main patroness. But during the Beltane ritual with Lakshmi, we had a dish and we filled it with water, and then people would bring coins. So everybody from the coven brought some coins, and they placed them, and they kind of charged them with the intention of fertility and abundance. And then they placed these into the bowl, right? And from there, we further kind of raised some energy and charged more of that fertile energy around them. And then one of our coven members, she has a like a fountain at her house. So she took the coins afterwards and she placed them in the fountain, so they continue to kind of bring abundance. So that is another option you can do. And in this case, we did it as part of a coven, but you could absolutely adapt this to a solitary ritual as well. Other things, blessing and planting of seeds. So sometimes we think of seeds as being connected to Ostara, but they can also be connected to Beltane, especially if there are plants that are more, their growth season is starting now, more now than it was earlier in the spring. So you can, again, just like you can do at Ostara, you can charge the seeds first with your intention. And even better yet, before you even do that, look up the intentions of certain plants, and then kind of figure out what your intention is. What kind of fertility and abundance do you want? Do you want love? If so, find some plants that are connected to love and have those be the ones that you bring into this ritual. On the other hand, if you're looking for money, find some plants that are connected to money and have those be the seeds that you bring to this ritual. And then you hold the seeds in your hand, you're going to charge them with your energy and of your intention, and then you will plant them and tend to them, and as they grow, so does your intention. So that is another really nice way to work with the energy of the season. Because the season is connected to the element of fire, fire meditation is another great thing to do. So we talked earlier about building the bale fire. So many ways that you could build it. I would suggest building it safely, obviously, somewhere. It could be built in a big cauldron or a big kind of fire pit. Or if you have somewhere else that you can build fire safely, you can build something big enough that you could even jump over it. But at least in this case, what I'm talking about here is fire meditation. So just staring into the fire, letting your eyes go kind of soft, and then just seeing what comes to you. And it can be very trance-like to do this. And then an extra thing that you can do when you're building your fire is you could consider using the 9 sacred woods. Now, this is something that I think I've only done like once or twice because it's not super easy to find the wood. But I think if you Googled online, you'd probably be able to find all of these. So I'm going to read them to you. So the woods are alder, ash, birch, hawthorn, hazel, holly, oak, rowan, and willow. So those are the traditional 9 sacred woods of the. I believe it's from the Celtic tradition. I think is where this comes from. And then, if you can't find one or more of these, and you're able to find apple or fir or grapevine, those are often substituted for any one that a person could not find. So you can basically build that fire, and that can be or put those in the fire that you build, and then you sort of have a fire for fire meditation, and you're also using the 9 sacred woods that are connected to the season. And then you can also jump over the balefire. I thought I was going to mention this. I don't see it in my notes, so I'll mention it now. So jumping over the balefire is a typically used for physical fertility. So I would just use very much caution if you are of childbearing age and you don't want to get pregnant or have your partner get pregnant. I would be very cautious jumping over a balefire because that is what this tradition is for. Um, uh, if you are older and you're past that, you could jump over it because you don't have to worry. But it's traditionally used to kind of ensure fertility of the couple. It's an old tradition that's been passed down from ages after ages. But that's another way that you can use the balefire. Okay, building an altar. So let's suppose you want to build an altar for for Beltane. So you can take your working altar. So if you just have an altar that's always up, you can swap out some of the items and have kind of Beltane related items on that, or you can build your own, temporary altar that you're just putting up for Beltane specifically. So totally up to you. But here would be some ideas: flowers, candles, of course, flowers kind of connected to the season of Beltane, candles connected to the fire element, the cauldron or the chalice connected to the divine feminine, the athame or the wand connected to the divine masculine. Other symbols of like fertility, so I think of like acorns and pine cones, things like that, very much connected to the god, and then the flowers and fruits very much connected to the goddess. So you're really looking for like something to represent the sacred union of the god and the goddess. Literally, that is what the Sabbath is really about, right? At least from the perspective of the story of the Wheel of the Year. Now, if you want to do some kind of specific colors, like for the altar cloth, green or white is always good at what am I talking about? Always good at Beltane. But other colors would be like spring colors. So pastels, if you like that, purples, pinks, blues, yellows. Those would also be really good colors for Beltane. Now, if you work with deities in your practice and you want to bring a deity into like whatever ritual you're creating, the archetypes of this time of the year are the fire god, the sun god, the green god of the like kind of the green man energy, or the maiden goddess, because the goddess is like here, she isn't in her mother form yet. This is before she consummates and as she's consummating the marriage. So specific deities you could work with: Bel, which many believe is one origin of the name Beltane; Pan, Jack in the Green. So again, we have like these green gods. Apollo, the connection to the sun. Dionysius and Bacchus have connection to kind of the revelry and the sexuality of the holiday. Aphrodite and Venus, Balder, We're personally going to be working with Mars and Venus in our coven this year, but many years we work with Hecate because of the thinning of the veils. She's also a goddess that you can work with, and at the local shop, Crooked Path, their actual coven is doing the Beltane this year, and they're working with Hecate at theirs. So, so those are some deities you could work with. A few other ideas. So when it comes to like spell work for a ritual, sexuality or sensuality. So if you want to increase either of those energies, love magic is perfect at this time of year. Fertility magic, creativity. If you want to like bring some fire behind a project, this is a good time of year. Abundance and prosperity. So those are just some of the options that you can use in your spell work. Um, Building the maypole we already talked about, but building a mini maypole is something that we're actually going to be doing in our online ritual this year. So I will talk about that at the end. And if you are interested in learning how to make one, you can join us for that. Other things that you can do, decorate trees in your yard with colorful ribbons. So these are just a few final ideas I have. I just think that's really, first of all, it's a beautiful way to honor the trees in your yard or in a park or something. And the ribbons always are connected to this energy of Beltane. Take some action on a project that you have been working on. So again, there's fire energy here. So use it to motivate you. So creativity tends to come from the water element. Things need to flow in order to be creative. We can't be all restricted like this. But we also need the fire energy of creativity kind of push us forward and get us motivated and moving and get the project going. So if there's been something you've been working on and it's sort of stuck and stagnant, now is the time of year to put that fire energy behind it and get it moving. Another thing you can do is walk the perimeter of your house, or you can even walk around your neighborhood. And as you do so, give thanks for this area and the people who live here. If it's your own property, kind of give thanks to those who live on your property, and then also ask for protection for the remainder of the year and through the remainder of the season. And you can also do that in your neighborhood, is just kind of protecting your neighborhood in general. And then tying into sort of the earth energy of this, the fertile energy of the earth, and Earth Day, not too far separated from Beltane. It's just, what could you do to give back to the earth? So maybe going around the neighborhood and cleaning up some litter and just making things look a little nicer. So those are some ideas for how to celebrate Beltane. And again, what I wanted to bring back and kind of reiterate is that, remember, it's not one day. You don't have to do all this in one day. It's seasonal energy. It opens up on the traditional day, which is between April 30th and May 1st. And then we, of course, have astrological Beltane on the 5th this year. And then, of course, we have that entire season of energy that goes almost to the start of Litha. So find a couple of these practices that you love and try them out during the season. Don't do it just one day. Carry that energy with you through the season, and you're going to really begin to start feeling like you're living more in the season than if you just kind of celebrate on this day and then you wait till Litha and then you celebrate on that day. See if you can be celebrating sort of that whole season in some way. All right, so let me tell you a bit about our well, I got a couple of things I wanted to share. So let's just do a little show and tell first, and then I'll tell you about our ritual that's coming up. So people always ask about books. So this book, Beltane, this is by Raven Grimassi. It is part of the Llewellyn's Sabbath series. So there is kind of a book that is for every Sabbath in this series, and it's written by a different Llewellyn author, this particular one by Raven Grimassi. So the book is fantastic because it goes into greater detail of all the things I talked about today, about the lore of Beltane. You'll also learn different recipes, different ritual ideas. It's got correspondences, it's got crafts. There's just a lot jam-packed into this book. So I highly recommend, I have the whole series. I didn't buy them all in one day. I recommend kind of buying them as you go. And then you have these as a resource. I pull these out all the time when I'm looking for ideas when Sabbats are coming up. So that is a great resource. I did want to share with you my I don't have very much statuary, but we have this beautiful green man, so we will place this on our altar at Beltane. So that is something I just wanted to share. And then I don't know how good this show and tell is going to work here, so we're going to try this. But I wanted to show I have a sting that was gifted to me by someone at the Crooked Path, at the coven at the Crooked Path. He attended our coven's ritual at Imbolc, and then he gifted this to me. And I don't know if we can do this here, but here we can see the top of it. So this is very, very tall. So obviously you're not going to see it when I turn it like this. But we're working on this every Sabbath. We're going to add something to it. So we sanded it down. I should say my boyfriend sanded it down, and then he used some natural stain on it. And then eventually our goal is to place a crystal here. I was going to braid some braids, and then I have all kinds of feathers that I've gathered on my hikes, and I'm going to hang those from it. So we're going to continue to work on this, and then we take this to all of our in-person rituals at least, and it represents the god. And so I wanted to bring it. I wanted to bring it here to show you, because first of all, it's beautiful, and sometimes people have never seen a staying. They're very. It's hard. It's difficult to find something that is actually made this way, and then this one is just such a gorgeous one. Um, uh, but it represents the god. It is one way to kind of represent the god, and the god's energy is very, very prominent at Beltane. So great idea to have something like that to represent the god. But I just wanted to show and tell with you. So let's talk about our Beltane ritual. So our Beltane ritual this year, many years we do the Hakate Keys to the Hidden Realms, and it's an awesome ritual. People love it. It's always one of our, if not, I think it's Samhain's usually our most popular ritual, then Beltane our second most popular. This year we've decided to do something a little different. We'll bring back the Hidden Realms, ritual next year, but this year we're going to do sacred marriage. So we're going to be working with the deities Mars and Venus as the god and goddess coming together in union, celebrating their connection together. We'll be doing a symbolic great rite that will be leading everybody who attends will be leading you through it, and teaching you how to do it in your space as well. We're going to be teaching how to make mini maple spell jars. And for those who want to make them with us, they can make them with us, or they'll have access to the replay where they could go back and they can watch that part later and make their spell jar later. We're going to do some energy balancing work, and then we're going to do a little candle magic. And so it is really, it's going to be a really fantastic ritual. We've really only done this ritual in the past with our in-person coven, and with our online coven before we opened it up. This was just like back when we were like in the pandemic, our first Beltane, when we had to like go online. This was the ritual that we did online, our first Beltane. So I'm really excited to share it with you. If you are in Shadow Seekers or in Coven of Midnight's Flame, of course, both groups, you guys have free tickets to it. So your Zoom link is in your membership portal or the Coven portal, or it's emailed to you, or it's in the Facebook groups. But if you are not a part of either of those groups, you could still join us. So we have the ability we're going to bring guests to this ritual. And so if you would like, you can get a ticket through donation. So I'm just going to throw this into the chat here for those who are live, and then for those who are watching back on YouTube, you will also find this in the comments. Okay, so you can go to that website and you can learn a little bit more about the ritual, and then you can donate any amount you want and you'll get a ticket, and that ensures that you can come live. And you also get a link for the replay afterwards. And then we send you a link, or we send you an email that has a list of all the things that you would want to gather to make the most out of the ritual. So hope you will join. We're super excited about this ritual. Again, like I said, we've never really done it publicly before. It was only in our very small private group that we did it several Beltanes ago. And so we're really excited to be bringing it back now. So if anybody has any questions about that, let me know. And then we're just going to jump into the Q&A really quick. So I have a few questions that were left for me. I'm going to answer those now. And then I'll also see what's going on in the chat. So if you have other questions, you can leave them here in the chat. It can be about anything related to witchcraft, shadow work, energy work. It doesn't just have to be about Beltane. Let me just check out the chat and then I will do these 2 questions I've got here. Oh, the chat keeps it jumps on me sometimes, and it's hard to read it. So if I ever miss something that you guys said, don't get upset. I go back later and I look for anything I might have missed. But the chat will sometimes jump on me. Oh my God, it just keeps jumping. Okay. So Kurt said, what would be a good representation of the Oak King? Okay, so I think anything like the acorns would be a very ideal representation of the Oak King. If you could find some acorns, I think that would be good. But greenery also works. So leaves, things like that would also be a really good representation. Outside of that, symbols of fertility, of male fertility, like seeds and nuts, things like that could also be good. And people are saying wow and beautiful and awesome, so I'm sure it's about the staying. It was such a gift to receive that. I couldn't even believe that we were at a charity event for the fires, and they were doing an auction, and as everyone was packing up and leaving afterwards, he walked by. He's like, oh, here for your coven. Do what you want with it. And so it's just such a wonderful gift. Okay, so let me answer a couple questions that gives people time to put them in the chat if you have any others. So Andrea is looking for recommendations on resources if you want to learn more about astrology. So she says she's done most of the modules in Shadow Seekers and also the class in Demystifying Witchcraft. So we do, so in Shadow Seekers, this is just for those who don't know, I have several astrology classes that are mostly related to like the higher self, past life or past lives, uh, things related to shadow work, like the aspects of the chart that are related to shadow work, to your wounds, things like that. So those are meant to be like these standalone classes that anybody can take. You don't have to have a background in astrology to enjoy them. It teaches you about one very specific part of your chart and what it means kind of in your healing journey, in your energetic journey. And those classes are very good because again, you don't need the background in astrology. But for those who want a little bit more background in astrology, in our Demystifying Witchcraft course, we do have one class, and it's like 2.5 hours. But again, it just teaches you sort of the main things about your chart. Sometimes people want to go more deeply into that. And so what I would do is I would recommend, so the thing is, I will never recommend something that I haven't used myself. So I won't recommend a teacher if I haven't taken classes from that teacher myself, and I won't recommend a book that I haven't read. So personally, I've never taken an astrology class except for just like small ones. Like I've never taken like, I guess I should say I've never taken an astrology course that would teach you like everything about your natal chart, because I learned all that on my own. So a lot of the courses I have taken, or small classes I've taken, just supplement kind of things like learning more about the higher self or this aspect, of your chart and how it relates to shadow work, things like that. So what I want to share here are 2 books that I used back in the day to learn astrology. Now, the first book is obviously very loved as it has no cover here on either side. This book is called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need. Now, I don't actually believe this is the only astrology book you'll ever need. It's by Joanna Martine Woolfolk, but if you just Google The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need, you will find this book. And there's newer versions of it. Now, this book, I got this book when I was like possibly 19 years old, early 20s at the latest. And I used this book to teach myself how to do astrological charts by hand. And I did it many, many years out of ephemerises and different things. And this is back in the day before you could put your birth date into a calculator and it would do all of it for you. So there is a beauty in learning how to do it yourself, but if you don't want to learn how to cast it yourself, about half of this book, that's what this is about. Now, the rest of the book is a nice resource on different things because it has like Venus and Pisces. It's got all of the different placements that you would need once you had a chart cast. So if you have a chart cast, I guess it's not even half the book. Maybe it's only like, there's a portion of this book that teaches you how to cast your own chart, but actually most of this is a resource. So I do highly recommend this book. Again, it's not the only book you'll ever need, but it really took me really far for a long time. The second book that I used, and I used this a little bit later, this book is called Understanding Your Birth Chart, or Understanding the Birth Chart, Astrology, and this is by Kevin Burke. And so this book is also very good. I've read it cover to cover. It's another great resource, and I've used kind of these two books together. And that I think if you had these two books or one of these, you would get a better hang of the rest of your chart, and you'd understand your natal chart a little more fully. So that's what I recommend on the two books. So hopefully that helps. And then Andrea also said, what are your thoughts on pets, familiars? Do you think some of your familiars in this realm are more oh, sorry. I wrote this down. I can't read my own writing. In this realm, or are they more your familiars in this realm or after they cross, or they pass on? And then she said, I had a dog that she was the closest to, closer to her than any other animal she's ever had. He died at age 8 suddenly, but I know he's my familiar in the spirit realm now, and he comes to me often. So first of all, there's this sort of debate that opens up around, or around the words familiar and how we use familiar versus like pet. And personally, I think that when people argue semantics and words like that, it's like, is it worth spending a lot of energy worrying about what words people are using? So the reason why there's a debate is because if you really look at what the word familiar meant, it meant animals that a witch would control to do their bidding. And so it could be any animal. It wasn't usually a pet. It could be an insect, it could be a bird, it could be a lizard, it could be a mouse or a cat or something like that. And that was the traditional use of the word. So when people use it today to refer to a pet, sometimes you'll see people get up in arms in groups and start arguing. And like I said, honestly, there's too much to worry about in this world to be arguing over the use of that word. you know, choose your battles, I guess, is where I'm going with this. But I think that today, the more of like the more of the use of the word familiar is an animal that aids you in your magical work. So animals that come when you sit down and you do your circle, those are more likely to be familiars than animals that you're really, really close to. But if you have, but I guess to answer Andrea's question, an animal can be a familiar while it's alive with you. It can also be a familiar once it has crossed through the veils. And if you feel that it's sort of aiding you in your spiritual journey, then I would consider that a familiar. And it doesn't like downplay like even like an animal that doesn't aid you in your spiritual journey, but is just like a great companion to you. It doesn't say anything negative about that or less about that. It's just kind of the way that we use the words. But I think even an animal who is a great companion to you, even if he doesn't, or she or they don't show up in your rituals with you, um, like my cat Camazotz is probably the animal that's been the closest to me ever. He sleeps on my shoulder every single night, and that teaches like not necessarily about my magic, but it teaches me a lot about like connection, right, to another being. And so in that way it is work, it's spiritual work. So I would consider that a familiar. So again, just I bring all this up because people debate the words. I think it's whatever words you use or the words you use, if that's what it means to you, but definitely an animal that you were very, very close to who crossed through the veils and now is coming to you from the spirit realm absolutely can be a familiar. So hope that helps. If you want me to elaborate more, if I didn't answer the question fully, just let me know. And then Kurt asked a couple questions here. So he said, do you think that communal consciousness is possible? And so there's this kind of idea of communal consciousness in this realm versus other realms. So if you really think about what communal consciousness is, it is like communing, right? Your consciousness with the consciousness of another. So it is a goal in many covens who meet, is to eventually have some kind of a communal consciousness where the consciousnesses merge. and we think and we send energy as one. So that is definitely a goal of covens who work together for a very long time. It all comes from trust, usually. Perfect. That's what we say oftentimes in covens: perfect love and perfect trust. Or it's better that you don't enter the circle than to enter without perfect love and perfect trust, is because you're trying to create that communal consciousness within the group. Communal consciousness, like outside of this world, like communal consciousness with other spirits and other beings, I also believe is absolutely possible when we merge our energy with them, even connecting to the higher self. That's within you, but it's also without out of you, or it's outside of you. In some ways, it's the part of you who is able to connect outside of you, I guess I should say, but connecting to the inner child, or parts of you. That's communing your consciousness with the consciousness of another part of you, or communing with other beings outside of you and merging that energy with like elementals or deities even, right? So absolutely, I totally believe that communal consciousness is possible and is a goal of much of our spiritual work. And then, so if that answers your question, if it doesn't answer your question, you want to elaborate, just let me know. And then another question you said, another odd thing for me is, since the Pope died, I've seen the word conclave a lot. So I think the reason why you're seeing that word so much right now is because in the Roman Catholic Church, the definition of that word is the assembly of cardinals for the election of a pope. So that's how popes get elected. So because the pope died, there's a conclave of people from the church that have to meet together to decide who the next pope will be. So you're going to see that word in the news. So I actually don't think it's like an odd thing to see it, because it's just in the consciousness of people right now. It's in the news all the time too, because they're actually doing this, as opposed to like when a pope is alive, we wouldn't be hearing much about that word because the conclave isn't meeting. So I think that's probably why you're seeing it so much right now. Okay, any other questions? You can put them in the chat. And I don't see anything else here for now, but let me know if there are, and let me tell you what's coming up. So next week on 5/6, I'm going to be doing an episode on visualization techniques. So we'll talk about how to improve your own visualization if you're a visualizer, and if you are somebody who has struggles with visualization, we'll talk about tips and strategies on what to do to improve it. So that's going to be an exciting episode. I'm not entirely sure what episode I'm doing on 5/13 yet. Definitely leave me ideas if you have any ideas that you would like to see an episode on. But on 5/20, we're going to do an episode on how to balance your solar plexus. Now, our Demystifying Witchcraft course is coming soon. It'll be opening up in June. I had hoped to have it out this month, but there's going to be a little delay, just as I have to deal with some other things going on in my life, including kind of a sick cat, and the end of finals for all my students is just a crazy time of year. So I've had to push Demystifying Witchcraft off until June. That will be the launch to the public. Now, I am going to say, if you are in Shadow Seekers and you haven't purchased that course yet and you want it, sooner than later, reach out, let me know. It's at a slightly lower price right now than it will be when it's launched, but not by a big difference. But if you do want the course earlier, sooner than later, and you're in Shadow Seekers, you can reach out to me. Shadow Seekers itself will open up in May, so people can also join in May, and then anyone in Shadow Seekers gets a discount on the Demystifying Witchcraft course. Now, the Demystifying Witchcraft course teaches all the foundations of witchcraft. It's basically the trainings I use in my own in-person coven, and now for our online coven, it also offers you a chance to join and initiate into our online coven as a first degree initiate. Shadow Seekers, on the other hand, teaches you the energy work and the shadow work and all of the deep healing work that helps you take all of your magical intentions and powers and intuition to a higher level. So they complement each other very well. And Shadow Seekers will be opening up near the end of May. I'll be kicking it off with a free sounds like it's going to be a free ritual, a free shadow work ritual to kick it off. And more details will come as we get closer to that time. So leave a heart if you like what you heard. That helps us get this out to the feed of more people. subscribe to our Body Mind Witchcraft YouTube channel if you're not already a subscriber, and make sure you watch some of our videos. Right now we're working on getting 4,000 video view hours this year, so that we can get monetized. So watch some of our videos and help contribute to that number. If you have not already signed up for the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work, I am going to drop a link for that in the chat here, and this will put you on our mailing list, so you will never miss any of these episodes. You receive the replay link to this every week, as well as other tips on shadow work, energy work, and witchcraft. So let me just drop that in the chat, and hope to see some of you at our Beltane ritual, the sacred marriage. I think I forgot to even say when it was. It's going to be Sunday, Sunday, May 4th, this Sunday coming up at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. But if you can't make it live and you have a ticket, you will get a replay of that. Okay, reach out to me if you have questions about that ritual. Hope to see some of you there. And until next time, blessed be.